The TonTons came out swinging in their match against the favored San Diego Dynasty at this year's NXL World Cup, and while the battle was back and forth the entire series, Dynasty ultimately came out on top in their decisive victory in overtime. With the series being so back and forth, I thought it would be a good idea to look at each point and see what lessons can be learned that we can apply to our own gameplay. Let's take a look. Point 1 goes to the TonTons, despite Dynasty making a strong early push up the middle. This was in large part because Ryan Greenspan was run down in an uneven trade shortly after making his move. How did this happen? Well, if we look at where Ryan and the rest of his team were, we can see that the only players who can really protect him this far up the field are either Archie, whose only chance is landing a trade with a player who comes to run him down, or from Chris Shear, who would have to look on the inside of the field from the Dorito can. In their current positioning, Shear is likely the best candidate to protect Ryan, although this would slow down their Dorito push. The lesson learned: if you plan to make early and aggressive pushes up the field, be aware of whose job it is to protect that person. There's nothing worse than going through so much effort to take ground, only to have it snatched away shortly after. Dynasty answers back in point number 2 by getting Chris Shear into the Dorito 50 early. This was likely the game plan in response to the TonTons applying a lot more pressure to the snake side rather than the Dorito side in point number 1. Despite the snake side pressure, Archie is able to eventually get into the snake and crawl all the way down to the TonTon side of the field. However, he's shot out by Axel as he wraps the outside of his bunker, leaving the snake side open for Dynasty. Despite this, Shear's pressure from the Dorito side is eventually followed by Marcelo's push up the middle, where they win the point shortly after. There's a few lessons learned from this point. The first, sometimes you gotta make something happen before it's too late. There was a fairly long window of time where Axel could have pushed into the snake to equalize the pressure they were getting from Dynasty's Dorito side. The only person stopping him was his heads-up opponent, Archie Montemayor. Granted, Ryan Greenspan was shooting cross-field towards Axel from time to time, but Archie eventually pushes down the snake side only to get shot by Axel, but it's too little too late at this point, as Marcelo and Shear mop up the rest of the TonTons. The second, don't take the obvious angle. I've talked about this at length in my gunfighting masterclass video, so check that out if you haven't already. It's linked down in the description below. Archie wrapping on the outside of his bunker here was a mistake, even if he didn't think Axel knew he was there. Granted, Archie was inches away from trading out with Axel, but he likely would have surprised and thereby eliminated Axel for free had he come up over the top of his bunker and on the inside of the field. And the third, great game plans are made by responding to how our opponents are playing the layout, not just in what is working for us. Although Ryan survived the push up the middle in point number 1, Dynasty recognized that the TonTons were putting a lot of resources into stopping their snakeside push. It could have been easy for them to come up with a clear plan to get Ryan up the middle, only to protect him this time around, but instead, they opted to push the opposite side of the field hard, which paid off for them big time. Moving on. Dynasty maintains their momentum by winning point number 3 with a strong breakout that puts 3 guns snake way. This pays off when they shoot TonTon Snake Runner off the break and get Archie in shortly after. Archie eventually gets shot out of the snake in his signature over-the-top look, but in an incredible read-and-react moment, Ryan fills into Archie's spot immediately after and eventually shoots out enough players for Dynasty to win the point. The lesson learned: we gotta be more careful repeating our tendencies and habits, especially when we're this deep into the tournament. Matty Marshall even says as much about Archie, that this over-the-top look has been working for him, meaning that he's noticed him doing it somewhat frequently, at least enough to comment on it. And although that might have been working for him earlier in the tournament, it's something he needs to be more aware of this late into the game.
So Axel now down the sidelines. Ooh, Archie gonna launch on or start.
But
Archie, yeah, Archie's been doing that and very successfully, staying up and over that top and not feeling much pressure, but.
Right.
Point 4 goes to the TonTons in convincing fashion as they shoot out 2 of Dynasty's Dorito players virtually off the break. TonTons keep the pressure up and shoot out the rest of Dynasty quickly after and win the point outright. As they say, if you're going to lose, lose fast. The lesson learned: just like in point 2 of the series, the TonTons did an excellent job of focusing their guns on what was working for Dynasty, the Dorito side. Doing so landed them 2 quick kills that sealed them the point. Creating game plans that stop what was working for our opponents while also exploiting our strength is how you win games. Dynasty sends Arturo Andrade to the snake off the break in point 5. The beauty of this play is that not only was it a surprising move to send someone to the snake off the break, but that this move was supported by shooting back at the only player threatening this play, the TonTon's back center player. You can see that just before the point starts, Marcelo Margot is looking for where the TonTon's guns are shooting. He identifies that it's a double stack at home and decides to shoot at TonTon's only gun that was shooting at the snake. This causes Fabrice Colombo to flinch, giving Arturo the time he needs to safely get into the snake. After the breakout, the TonTons draw a yellow flag, which pulls 2 of their players, making it a 5-on-3. Dynasty eventually gets into red zone positions and closes out the point. The lesson learned here, support your runners by shooting at the players that are shooting at them. This can only come by having the intel to know which direction your opponents are shooting, either by scouting their breakouts, identifying their tendencies, or by simply looking at them and seeing what they're telegraphing. The subplot here is, don't telegraph what you're going to do before the point starts. Point 6 starts with a strong 5-on-5 breakout, with both teams pushing opposite sides of the field. Axel is able to get to the 50 Snake before Dynasty gets to the 50 Dorito, but Dynasty is aware of this and plays tight accordingly. With the point coming to a standstill, the weakness for Dynasty's defense is the Snake can. If the TonTons are able to eliminate Archie out of the can, the point will surely go to them. Axel continues to apply pressure from the Snake, while Bryce Gauden eventually makes it to the Dorito 3, giving them the angle they need to shoot out Archie. TonTons follow this up by shooting out the rest of Dynasty as they try to fill the holes in their positioning. The lesson learned here, playing pocket or defensively isn't just about playing tight in your bunker. It's also about being in positions that keep your players alive. Had Sheer pushed down the Dorito side, or Dynasty had a gun cross-field that kept the TonTons out of the Dorito 3, they would have been able to survive indefinitely, as long as they didn't die in a gunfight. Identify the bunkers that poke holes in your defense, and do what you can to keep your opponents out of them. For some reason, they play an inconsequential 0.7 with 5 seconds left, which ends in full time, and we move on to overtime. Now, there's a lot that happens in overtime. For one, more bodies drop off the break than ever have before in this series. Dynasty not only risks a Snake runner who gets shot, but they also manage to shoot both the TonTon Snake Tower and Dorito Can players off the break, making it a 4-on-3. It's still anyone's game, but Dynasty does have superior positioning after the breakout. The point eventually goes to a soft standstill where neither team wants to take big risks, especially with plenty of time left. A big reason this point comes to a halt is because the TonTons don't know what to do about Ryan Greenspan, who's stopping Axel from getting into the Snake. Despite this, Axel not only manages to survive running through Ryan's gun as he gets into the Snake, but he also manages to push through a second gap Greenspan is holding. Ryan missing these shots is very uncharacteristic of him, and pretty fortunate for the TonTons. After the series of these moves, the point once again comes to a standstill. Archie continues to stand over the top of his bunker, despite its relative riskiness at this point, trying to look for a pick to open things up. But the play to win the game at this point is to push the Snake and trade out with Axel. Marcelo puts this together and pushes into the Snake past Archie. In a moment of controlled chaos, Axel shoots Archie, but Marcelo surprises and shoots Axel in the loader, and immediately turns his gun towards the Snake can, eliminating Colombo and securing them the win. The lesson learned here, don't be afraid to make plays that would surprise your opponents, especially when you have the information you need to solve the puzzle in front of you. Archie was too hesitant to make a push, and instead was trying to wait for a pick. Marcelo knew that him going into the Snake and past Archie would be surprising, and that no one would likely see him make that move. Excellent play for Marcelo to win that point and the game for Dynasty. There were a lot of lessons learned from this series, but let us know which one will help you the most this season. As always, if you like this type of content, please be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. See you next time.